Hi everyone, my name is Taylor Hopkins. I am a counselor here at the Armstrong Campus Counseling Center at Georgia Southern University, and welcome to our presentation on self-care and work-life balance. So before we get started, we do have some objectives and some takeaways we hope that you learn from today's presentation. The first one is to define what self-care is, increase your understanding of the impact of neglecting self-care, and also utilizing effective strategies to increase self-care and manage a work-life balance. So we hear the word self-care, we think of a balance, right? We think of the GIF we see below. We have many different balls we're holding, and we can drop them and juggle them and maybe jump back and forth between each one with no problem at all, right? So this is how we think we look balancing our lives. When in reality, this is how we actually look. So the meme says, me trying to handle more than one thing at a time. So we already are holding one ball. We openly say, hey, I can take on a second ball. But the moment someone throws us a ball, it hits us in the head and it just throws us completely out of whack. So first things first, what is self-care? So this is something that we've all heard before and we try to engage in as much as possible. So self-care broadly is just anything you do to promote your own sense of wellness. So it's making sure you're paying attention to what you need, making sure your needs are met, making yourself a priority, and then trying to maintain a good balance in all areas of your life. So the picture says, take care of yourself. So just like a plant, we water it, we fertilize it, we put it in a new pot, we put it in the sun. Sometimes we have to imagine ourselves like a plant. We have to take care of ourselves and water ourselves in order for us to grow and be the best people and students that we can be. So of course, many of us face barriers to self-care, right? How many of us have found ourselves saying, I don't have time to self-care, or I can just push a little bit longer, or it's just not that bad, right? So of course, there are many barriers to self-care. There are practical and psychological barriers. So practical things are the tangible, everyday factors that just get in the way of us taking care of ourselves. So the first thing is time. There are only 24 hours in a day, right? And there are only so many hours that you're awake or even have the energy to do things. So one, do you have the time and can you find the time to do what you want to do for yourself in the day? Two, money. Money is always an issue. So can you afford to do what you want to do? If you think self-care is getting a massage, right, or getting a manicure, well, those things cost money. And if you're tight on a budget or trying to squeeze every last penny, you might not be able to afford what you want to do. And it's pretty disappointing where the one thing you want to do is out of your budget, right? So space. So being college students, you're more likely than not to be sharing your space with multiple people. And if you're living in an apartment, sometimes that may be 2 or 3 people. So do you even have the space to do what you want to do, right? As a GIF to the left, it's like the moment you take time for yourself to meditate, there are so many things getting in the way, right? There are people who are vacuuming, there are people making noise. So if you're sharing a space, it may be really hard to take that time because you can't, right? So psychological barriers. So these are things that we can't see. These are the internal barriers, right? The things that hold ourselves back. So the first thing you may hear is a selfish myth, is that it's selfish to take time for yourself. It's selfish to carve out time for yourself and for no one else, right? We know it's important to prioritize ourselves, but sometimes it feels that way. So this also goes hand in hand with self-judgment and judgment for others. We live in a society where people prioritize productivity, accomplishments, achievements, and it's always put in front of us. We're living in a world of social media where we're constantly seeing people flaunting how little sleep they got, how much coffee they're drinking, and how much more they were able to do more than yourself. So when we tell someone that you need to take a break or you need time for yourself, we immediately start to feel bad because if they can do it, why can't I do it, right? If you tell someone that you need a break, you immediately feel like they're going to judge you for being weak or why aren't you able to keep up with everybody else? And then that ties in with emotional needs are invisible. As all mental health needs, we can't see depression physically. We can't see sadness physically compared to a physical scar. So it's a lot easier to deny things that you aren't able to see. That's not really portrayed to us in the everyday sense. So it's easy to say, oh, it's okay. I'm not that tired, or no, I'm not that exhausted. When we know that that's not true. So how do we respond to those barriers? So the first thing we need to acknowledge that self-care is not selfish. As the picture says, you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself first. Self-care makes you grow, similar to a plant. The more you take care of yourself, the more you're able to give. And in the long run, it helps you achieve all the goals you want. And we also know that suffering is not a contest. As I mentioned in the slide before, because of the world we live in, we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people. You don't have to base your tolerance or exhaustion level based on what you're seeing from your favorite Instagrammer or YouTube, your coworkers, fellow students, professors, etc. You know your barriers and you know what your limitations are. You are completely valid to feel how you feel. And at the same time, you're also deserving of that compassion and self-care. If you need something, you need something. And it's okay to say that you need something. So what is the cost of neglecting self-care? So just like how we perceive emotional needs as invisible, and when something's invisible, it's a lot easier to deny it, not a lot easier to say that it's not important. But with that, the costs and consequences may also be invisible. So if we're not taking care of ourselves, we might find ourselves more anxious, more irritable. If someone asks you to do something and you willingly take it on, you may find yourself really irritated or snappy or rude to that person. And it's not because you're mad at them because they asked you to do something else. You're mad at yourself because you added something else to your schedule. You're going to have increased stress. We know what depression looks like, but burnout. Burnout is frustration, fatigue, and apathy that results from prolonged stress, being overworked, and intense activity. Burnout is characterized by feeling pessimistic, where you feel like nothing you're doing is helpful. There really isn't any point of that. And it can really take away the passion you once had in something. And then also similar to depression, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to find yourself withdrawing from things you used to find fun, things you thought you loved before, and you're just not going to feel like yourself. So what are the types of self-care? So I'm going to take the time to go into more detail about each one of these, but just know that this list is not exhaustive. This is just a good place to start. So there are physical self-care, there's mental self-care, social, spiritual. And then in this presentation, I'm also going to highlight occupational self-care, which focuses on the balancing of your work and personal life. So physical, staying healthy. So this is just a reminder of things that you've heard 1,000 times before. In order to take care of yourself, you have to start at the physical level. We have to start with ourselves. So are we moving our bodies? If we're not moving our bodies, if we're being sedentary, if we're just sitting around, you're gonna feel really lethargic. You're gonna feel not like yourself. So when it comes to self-care, we have to move our bodies some type of way, right? So currently right now, we are in the 2020 COVID pandemic. And so the world of virtual home workouts has exploded. There are so many virtual workouts you can do and log on and see. But if maybe doing a workout at home or going to the gym is too daunting, too anxiety driven, then let's start with a 5-minute walk, right? If you have time between your classes, instead of taking the shuttle bus, can I walk? You know, can I walk a mile, 2 miles? If walking is not your thing, we can do yoga. And exercise is just anything that makes you feel good inside. And once again, the theme that you don't have to compare yourself to other people to make yourself feel good. So a bedtime routine. So a bedtime routine is something that helps your brain transition from being awake and alert to now going to sleep. So first things first, are you getting enough hours of sleep? We know that a healthy night of sleep consists of 7 to 8 hours. We know that if you're sleeping less than that, you're not going to be performing at your optimal, right? So that's important to make sure that you are going to bed early, that you are getting those necessary hours. But a bedtime routine can also consist of what are you doing to get yourself to go to bed, right? So a bedtime routine can mean putting your phone down at nighttime when you're in the bed. Our phones have a blue light on them that actually keeps us awake at nighttime, but most phones nowadays have a blue light filter that actually changes your phone's light from blue to an orange tint. You can also turn your phone on dark mode, or just set a time for yourself that after a certain time of night, you're not going to scroll through social media, put your phone on do not disturb, and just transition to going to sleep, right? A bedtime routine can also be putting on some soft music, some ocean sounds, nature sounds, or even some essential oils to transition your brain to say, hey, it's time for us to go to sleep. So eating regularly and staying healthy. So the first question you have to ask yourself is, am I eating 3 meals a day and snacks? So we know that when we're working on an assignment, it's so much easier to keep going, right? It's so much easier to ignore that ping of hunger of I'm going to eat later, or I can just grab a quick snack, something salty, something sweet. If I'm tired, I can drink another cup of coffee, an energy drink to keep going. When in reality, we know the best source of energy comes from having a balanced diet. So even though the sweet and salty, easy to grab snack may feel fulfilling and satisfying in the moment, we know that sustainable energy for your body comes from eating carbohydrates, lean proteins, fruits, and vegetables. And it's better for you in the long run to prevent that caffeine or sugar crash you may experience when you consume not so healthy snacks and drinks, right? So with that, staying healthy, even though that cup of coffee is giving you the boost you need in the morning, we know that staying hydrated is so much healthier for you. Staying hydrated prevents migraines and headaches, and there are so many other benefits to drinking water throughout the day. So make sure no matter where you go, self-care could just be putting 2 water bottles out on the counter for you to grab before you go to class to make sure that you're constantly drinking to remind yourself. And then also take breaks when needed. A lot of us are so busy that we're not taking the time to be in tune with our own bodies. If we sit down with ourselves and listen, our body is actually telling us exactly what it needs. If you're feeling sleepy, take a nap. If you're hungry, eat. If you're feeling thirsty, take a sip of water. So make sure you take at least 5 minutes today to do a body scan and to recognize what is my body telling me, and what do I need to do more to keep it healthy. So mental and emotional self-care. So this goes back to the things that are internal, and these are things that are not as quite easy to see. So self-validation and encouraging self-talk. So it's okay to let yourself experience your emotions, to say, this is hard, this is frustrating. Because when you say those things, it's making supportive statements to yourself and invalidating your personal experience. So tell yourself pep talk, be your biggest cheerleader. I can do this, I can keep going, or you're doing the best you can. Sometimes when we're not receiving that external cheerleading, you always have to remember that you have yourself and that you can encourage yourself, because we all need that pep talk here and there. So making space to experience all emotions. This is something that's really important because no one wants to be inconvenienced by feeling angry or sad or frustrated, right? However, no one can stop those emotions from happening because we can't stop ourselves from feeling happy or joyful or excited, right? So a lot of times we don't want to feel what we call negative emotions because when we feel negative emotions, we think we're more likely to act on it. If we're angry, I'm going to yell at somebody, right? But the more you experience it, emotions are just like waves. They're going to come in and they're going to quickly go back out. When you try to numb yourself from emotions or prevent yourself from feeling what you're feeling, you're invalidating yourself. And what happens is that those emotions start to bubble under the surface, and all of a sudden you're having this outburst later on, and you have no idea why you were that mad, or the classic, you may find yourself overreacting to something. So even though hard emotions are something that we all experience, give yourself that opportunity to allow yourself to feel, because it's a lot healthier in the long run. So mental and emotional self-care can also just be having fun, doing the things that make you who you are. Do you have a favorite movie? Turn that movie on, watch some TV, play a game, engage in your own hobbies, or even start a new project that you've been putting off, right? So also you can stimulate and challenge your mind with something new. Sometimes we get caught up in the everyday life of doing the same exact thing every single day. Sometimes we just might need something new. So if you want to challenge yourself to wake up your brain and to develop new skill sets, learn a new hobby, learn a new language. There are plenty of YouTube videos out there that are available for you to try something new. And if you really want to stimulate yourself, give yourself time to work on a puzzle, to think about what's happening in front of you, to visualize. And I also want to mention the most important part about mental and emotional self-care is making sure that no matter what you do that's fun for yourself, it should not be dreadful. It should not be a bore, or it should not be a chore. It shouldn't feel that way. It should feel like you want to do this and that this will bring you joy if you engage in it. And the most important thing to take away about emotional self-care is that it is okay to say no. If you say no, the world will continue, and that is okay. It's important to recognize your own limits and establish your own boundaries. You are more than welcome to not take on anything else that you don't want to take on. You have to prioritize what's more important in your life and what's urgent in your life. If it doesn't fit your schedule, that's okay. So social self-care, we all know what this is. This is spending time with our friends and family on social media by calling, texting, messaging. But social self-care can also be doing something that's a little bit outside your comfort zone, joining a new club, a program, or even an extracurricular activity or club sport that you always had interest in, but maybe just didn't think about. So asking and accepting help from others and setting boundaries in personal relationships. So sometimes we need that person to talk to when we're feeling overwhelmed, sad, angry. But how many of us have tried to talk to a friend, we just want to vent to them, and the first thing they do is problem solve, right? By them problem solving, it makes us feel invalidated, we get angry, we get upset because you're not getting what you need from that friend. So sometimes self-care means you have to be able to advocate for what you need to your friend. Tell your friend, hey, I'm upset, I'm angry, I just need you to do X, Y, and Z. When you learn how to advocate for yourself, you're always putting yourself first. And even though it may seem kind of weird, but at least that friend knows exactly what you're looking for, and it'll be beneficial in the long run. And then also set those boundaries with your friendships. Sometimes you can't go to everyone for everything. So being mindful how you can use your support system that will work best for you. So spiritual self-care. So spiritual self-care does not necessarily mean it has to be religious. This can be anything that makes you feel connected to anything that's higher than you. anything that makes you feel like you have a purpose. So similar to the physical and healthy slide, yoga is something you can do. Yoga is a great combination of getting some exercise, stretching, while also focusing on your mental well-being, doing a body scan, recognizing where the aches and pains are in your body and focusing on your breathing. Spiritual self-care can mean taking time to meditate, to pray. You can join a spiritual community or engage in spiritual rituals and practices, whatever that means to you, whatever makes you feel good. So the benefit of spiritual self-care is that this is your own journey of experiencing and engaging in whatever makes you feel better as a person. All right. So occupational self-care, the balancing work and life. So I just want to preface by saying I understand that everyone may not have a job, career, major life where you can separate your work life and your personal life. Sometimes your work life may transition to your personal life. And so what do you do with that? So if you have the opportunity, the most important thing you can do for yourself is to leave work at work. When you go home for a weekend, if you go home and you're taking a day off, whatever you did not accomplish on that day will be on your desk the very next day. So this also ties into refrain from checking emails and answering phone calls on weekends, holidays, or days off, if possible. So if you're home on a weekend, if you're taking a personal day off, don't check your emails because those emails will still be there when you return back to the office. This is a great opportunity for you to use your coworkers, use your supervisor, that if you're not available, there was someone else who can take up that time or take up your responsibility that you're in charge of while you're gone. So set those boundaries. It's also important to be mindful and fully present, right? So if you're at work, be at work. But if you're on vacation, at home, with your friends, don't think about work. Focus on exactly what you're doing, enjoy what you're doing, because if we don't set those boundaries, what's gonna happen is that we're gonna be sitting at work thinking about vacation, and then we're gonna be on vacation thinking about work. And no one wants that, right? We wanna make sure that we have that balance. And if you have a life working where they seem kind of enmeshed, figure out time where you can establish time in your life for, at this time I'm going to work on my work, and then at this time I'm going to do everything else I have to do. So again, making sure that you are able to recognize and establish those differences in your life. So how do we develop a self-care plan and take everything we talked about today in today's presentation and make it a reality? So the first thing we have to do is start small. So no one can run a marathon overnight. In order for us to run a marathon, we have to make those small steps to get to the 26 miles, right? So you may find yourself wanting to be over ambitious where you're scheduling self-care for yourself every single day. And when we try to make so many changes at one time, we find ourselves becoming overwhelmed. It's daunting, you can't do it. And then all of a sudden we just give up, right? It's too hard. So start small. Think of one area of your life and your schedule that you can make a change in, and try to make one small achievable goal. When you're able to achieve that goal, you feel so much better. You feel like you did something. And then once you're able to do that, begin to add more and more and more to your schedule. And then eventually you have a brand new routine for yourself that incorporates self-care. So also it is important to prioritize. So when it comes to self-care, a key component is time management. We have to learn how to manage our time. So a great way of doing that is just planning out our week visually. You can use a planner, dry erase board, calendar, your phone, whatever works best for you. Make sure you include your work schedule, your classes, extracurricular activities, and everything in your life that you already made a commitment to. When you're able to see it visually, you're able to see, one, how you're really using your time, but also how much time, free time you actually have, and what you're able to add in as a result. So when it comes to self-care, we have to include ourselves in our schedule. But I want to make sure it's important to say, to be intentional. Again, if you have a 3-hour gap between your class, we're not going to go run a marathon in a 3-hour gap, right? Start small, as I mentioned in the first thing on this slide. Let's go home and work out for an hour, or go take a nap for an hour. These should all be achievable things that you can achieve, right? Going back to the barriers, if you can't afford it, it shouldn't be on our schedule. If you don't have the time for it, it shouldn't be on our schedule. And if you don't have the space for it, it shouldn't be on your schedule. So make sure you're very intentional when you're trying to think of yourself, because again, you are important. And if you need additional help, there are apps such as Headspace and Calm, and plenty of YouTube videos of self-guided meditations that you can watch and follow along and just find out what works best for you. And the most important takeaway from this slide is overcoming resistance. The hardest part of making changes in your life is starting. When you have a routine and you want to do something different, it's hard to try something different because you're so used to doing something and now you're trying to change that. But in order to make any change in your life, the first step is making that first step. And then that one step will turn to 1,000, and before you know it, you made a change in your life. So acknowledge right now in this moment that it's going to be a little bit tough, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So when to seek help. So you can do everything that we talked about in today's presentation and still feel like something is off, something's not working for me. So if you find yourself feeling overwhelmed, you're really anxious, or you're having a lot of intrusive thoughts, you're just having a hard time concentrating, not just at school, but at work, but in all areas of your life, you're feeling hopeless, you're withdrawing more than you usually are, you're not quite feeling like yourself, this is a great opportunity that says, hey, this may be beyond what I can do for myself, and it may be time to find a professional. This is a great opportunity to come to the Counseling Center. The Counseling Center is available at Statesboro and Armstrong campuses. We offer individual counseling, relationship, group counseling. We have groups and workshops. We have psychiatry and medication management, case management, outreach and consultation, and training. You can reach us or find us online at georgiasouthern.edu/counseling. The Academic Success Center is also available for you. There are consultations, learning support, success coaching, testing, tutoring, mentoring, workshops, and outreaches. And you also can reach them at georgiasouthern.edu/success. So if you need help ever, please reach out, give both departments a call, and we'll be more than welcome to give you the assistance you need. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And this is your reminder to take care of yourself because you are important. Thank you everyone and have a great day.